Hi everybody, welcome back to Indycar. I'm having to keep a low profile today because my recent programme seems to have started a bit of a sort of storm of protest or a storm of questions about what's actually happening and what the reality is of this power grab of which David Mundell is planning. Well, I can tell you the facts as I understand them to confirm this rather than people asking me a lot of questions. The simple fact is that Mundell has been recruiting staff from the Scottish Civil Service, which is based at Victoria Quay. So he's been secretly going in there and trying to poach staff away from the Scottish Government's civil service in Victoria Quay. Once he's got enough of these people assembled, and he's looking at the moment to recruit at least 100, possibly more, he's then going to move them to New Waverley, which is a building, I understand, which used to occupies a space which used to be the old Waverley bus station. I don't know Edinburgh at all, so people can correct me if I'm wrong about the position and location. But this is where the new so-called hub, and I say hub in inverted commas, which the UK government is about to build, will be positioned. Now, the blurb, the official explanation of what this hub is basically supposedly to house the new Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs and other things, other essential staff for other purposes. And it's this extra bit of staff that I think we have to be concerned about. Remember that this new office that they're planning to build is pretty big, and 100 staff is enough to do quite a considerable amount of work, considering, remember, that the existing Scottish office, or Scotland office, or whatever they're calling it this week, has got somewhere that had around about 5 people working for Mr. Mundell. However, my information is that it's not going to be used just as an HMRC hub, nor is it going to be used to try and maintain the so-called internal market of the UK. There is no internal market in the UK. This is a complete invention. It's a myth. There never was a single market in the UK. The UK is a single entity. It has a market. It makes no difference whether it's single or double or married or divorced. It's just a market. So this is another myth. The real reason for this being here is not to maintain the single UK market. It's to make sure that everything runs smoothly after Brexit and that there is no trouble from the fractious, rebellious Scots who might throw a spanner in the works of Brexit. Now, what I said earlier to you in the previous post was that the 111 powers which were supposed to be returned to Scotland under the devolution settlement, that was that everything that was not reserved was devolved to Holyrood. Instead of devolving them to Holyrood, they're going to be given to Mundell, and Mundell will then supposedly administrate or use these powers in Scotland as a completely illegitimate, unelected grandee who's got power which he has no right to wield, because nobody in Scotland has elected him as any kind of governor. That has purely been the appointment by Theresa May of Mundell as some kind of vice-regal governor of this particular colony. And that's really what this is. Mundell is going to be placed into Scotland as though he was running a tea plantation or a cotton plantation or some other place where the country was occupied by the UK and the local natives are exploited, because that is what this is about. It's about Scotland continuing to have its resources plundered and exploited in order to pay the absolutely incredible debts that have been run up by countless numbers of British governments since the war. And this is the problem. The British state is virtually bankrupt. It relies on Scottish oil, Scottish gas, Scottish renewables, whisky revenues to prop up its completely bankrupt economy. And this is what's wrong. And this is the reason why Mundell is being placed in the position of power that he's going to be put in. And this is the reason why Mundell in this office with these 100 people should worry every single Scottish voter. And I don't care what party you vote for, whether you vote for the SNP, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party. The only possible people who might be in favour of this will be the 12% of the Scottish population who vote Tory these days, because that's all there is. Mundell has 12% of the population behind him, and I think it will be even less than that after this particular scheme plays out, because the end game here is for Mundell to start wielding these £111 and to keep them away from the Scottish Parliament, and to try and kid everybody on that they've been devolved and brought back to Scotland, and he is going to distribute this largesse amongst the population like he's some kind of new saviour of Scotland. He's not. He is maintaining the power of London, and he is their man here. He is a Londoner. He is a Tory. He's a London Tory. He is not Scottish. He has absolutely no connection with Scotland whatsoever, other than the name of his office. He is simply a servant of the Tory government in London. It's interesting, though, that if he succeeded in this, and I hope he won't, because I know the Scottish Government is not going to allow this to happen, this is going to provoke yet another constitutional crisis, because we cannot have two governments governing a devolved country, which until we leave the EU is still devolved. And if this is Mundell's game, then we need to be able to cut the legs from under him figuratively now, before Brexit happens and before the repeal bill gets a chance to be forced through. I predicted a while ago that the repeal bill is probably going to be pushed through at an accelerated pace. Remember, the repeal bill does not have to wait for Brexit on the 29th of March. They can repeal things at any time they like. They could just accelerate the process. The British government doesn't care. It will find a way to justify that. So, to close this argument out, Mundell is poaching staff away from the Scottish Parliament. And he's doing this surreptitiously. Nobody knew it was happening until recently. But anybody who is lured away from working for Holyrood to working for the so-called Scotland office, or whatever its name is this week, should not be allowed ever to hold a post again at Holyrood after independence. I think anyone who deserts Scotland to work for Mundell should be given no job back in Holyrood after we get independence, because basically they're selling out their country. They're selling out their country for a few more bucks so that they can have a better life, and to hell with the rest of the country. They're quite happy for the Tories to run Scotland into the ground with austerity, to suck every drop of oil and every whiff of gas out of the North Sea so that they can waste it all on their debts. Because that's what this is about. It's about the British government borrowing more money. It's not about anything else. It's about our oil paying for their debts. It's not about anything else. It's always about the money. Mundell cares nothing for Scotland. The Tories care nothing for Scotland at all. They never have done. They're not a Scottish party, and they don't deserve to have even the name Scottish in front of their title. The Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party? No. It's just the Conservative and Unionist Party. There is absolutely nothing Scottish about it. I'm going to go and do another couple of lessons now. My day's not finished yet. But please just think about this, okay? I wouldn't make these points online if I didn't know them to be true, and if I didn't trust the source from these pieces of information. The only place this information can come from and be accurate is from inside Mundell's office. So, Mr. Mundell, if you're watching me today and you're wondering why all this information's coming out, then I think maybe you should look close to home, because obviously there are people in your employ who don't trust you. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I'm sure there are plenty of people who are working in your office who may not be what they seem. So I would be looking over your shoulder, Mr. Mundell. Nothing you do in Scotland is secret. And I'll find out, and so my contacts will find out what you're up to. The SNP may not be able to do this. The police may not be able to do this, and we don't have a secret service to bug your office. But there are plenty of patriotic Scottish people who are quite happy to sell you out and I'll be the first person to start shouting about it when they do give me information. You can be sure of that. Anyway, I'm off to do some real work now, but trust me, folks, Mundell is not a trustworthy individual, never has been. Typical Tory, can't trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. He is about to undertake a coup d'etat. There is going to be a takeover of Scotland. It's going to happen in the next 12 months because they have to do it in the next 12 months. Otherwise, the SNP is going to hold the referendum, win it, and it will be game over for the UK. They're going to be exiting in Brexit on their own without any oil money at all to prop them up. And finally, the people of England will discover the truth that it's not them who've been subsidising Scotland, but is in fact Scotland that has been subsidising them. And when that happens, the Tories' days of ruling England will be over. And I sincerely hope that when we do become independent, that the Labour Party in England finally kicks the Tories out of office completely, and that England can have the same kind of social justice that Scotland will enjoy when it's independent. Because the Tories have wrecked this country. They have ruined it. They have run up debts that they can't control, and they have forced austerity on millions of people all over the country, and they have punished disabled people, they've punished the elderly, they have forced people into suicide in the most disgraceful manner possible. Even the United Nations and the EU has criticised them and called them inhuman the way they've treated people. And it's about time actually that somebody spoke out and said, let's not stand for any more of these Tories in Scotland. Let's kick them out. Mundell, you're not fooling anybody. We're on to you, and I'm afraid the gaff has been blown. Your big scheme has been exposed, and it's been exposed by people who work in your own department. Nobody in Scotland trusts you, Mundell. So no matter what you scheme, there will always be somebody near you who will give it away and who will sell you out because they're patriotic about Scotland and they don't believe you. I'm off. I will see you all later. But keep your powder dry. Things are going to happen very quickly this year. I did say at the beginning of the year, I said this would be a momentous year. And I'm not kidding. It really is going to be a very fast moving, very dramatic year. But we will win, and we will win peacefully, democratically. We're not Catalonia, and Britain is not Spain. We are a nation. We have no difficulty in proving our bona fides. We've been a nation for over 1,000 years. So there is no way that we are ever going to be extinguished by anything. It doesn't matter what the treaties say, and it doesn't matter what the Tories say. Okay, I'm off. That's a long rant for me. Have a good evening, people, and as usual, if you need to speak to me, you know where to find me online. Bye for now.